Hi, my name is Megan and I did the summary of the article Gender Differences in Communication and Intercultural Experience by Becky Michelle Mulvaney. In this time when political, educational, and social discussions center on issues of diversity, of creating a constructive multicultural society, it may be helpful to examine problems in communication between the genders as a cultural issue. In this presentation, it is argued that it is both useful and appropriate to view gender communication as a form of intercultural communication. This discussion highlights the primary role played by communication in gender issues. Two assumptions from communication theory help situate the overview on gender communication. First, communication is epistemic. Communication is the medium by which we come to know things. Second assumption is that communication is agiological, that is, communication is value-laden. The significance of communication practices in shaping our lives is no less important in the area of gender and communication. From a very early age, males and females are taught different linguistic practices. Communication behaviors that are acceptable for boys, for example, may be considered completely inappropriate for girls. Women experience linguistic discrimination in two ways: in the way they are taught to use language and the way they actually use the language. Communicative practices not only reflect notions about gender, but they also create cultural concepts of gender. Furthermore, the role of cultural and communication practices directs us to an intercultural perspective on gender and communication. Literature on intercultural communication often includes discussion of subcultures, a racial, ethnic, regional, economic, of social community exhibiting characteristics, patterns of behaviors sufficient to distinguishing it from others within an embracing culture or society. Communication between the sub or co-culture and the dominant culture represents a form of intercultural communication. Worldview, language, and nonverbal communication are often identified as important elements of intercultural communication. Worldview refers to a cultural's orientation towards such things as God, humanity, nature, and the universe. Language is another significant element of the intercultural communication. Finally, nonverbal communicative behaviors such as concepts of time or the use of space differ widely from culture to culture. So differences between male and female worldviews, like differences between Asian and American worldviews, may significantly affect communication. In fact, it is difficult to discuss differences in worldviews without talking about language, since our view of the world is expressed through language and other symbol systems. Language also reflects differences in social status between genders. Differences in language usage and worldview are woven together and is difficult to separate. And nonverbal behavior is another form of language, which demonstrates differences between men and women. Space is a primary means by which a culture designates who is important, who has the privilege. Differences in the amount of space given to and taken by women and men reflect society gender roles. So women are less likely to have privacy in their family homes. In the workplace, employees in the traditional female role, secretaries, have smaller space than the traditional male role of executive. And when asked about it, males got more aggressive and women tend to yield space rather than challenge the intruder. These are a few examples of the ways in which differences in the communication between the genders fit categories of primary elements in intercultural communication. The point is that these differences can create problems in communication. By learning not to assume that men and women are the same, we can become more sensitive to the fact that men and women's values and goals may differ, and generally their verbal and nonverbal language will vary as well. In this presentation, I hope to have offered an overview of the significant role of communication plays in contemporary gender issues. Thanks everybody for listening.